So I was working on this article the other day, and in part of the article, I mentioned how many views that I had got on my writing in the past year, but I actually had to go look it up. So I went and looked on my Medium dashboard, and I started calculating month after month after month, and try to figure out how many views I got in the past 12 months, in the past year. And I looked, and it was nearly 6 million views. It was like 5.5 million views, something like that. So we'll be modest and round it down to 5 million. But in the past year alone, my articles have received 5 million views. I want to share insights with you along the way, from me going to having 0 followers on Medium, to having 0 reads on Medium, to having 0 views on Medium, to going to over 5 million in a single year. I went from 0 followers to, I believe now, well over 70,000 followers on Medium. So I'm going to tell you my personal secrets to writing and blogging success on the website medium.com. As always, I'm going to keep things as blunt and brutally honest as I possibly can, and I'm going to share some insights that I have learned along the way. But before we get to that, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the little notification bell so you can get brand new videos the moment they come out. That notification bell is very important because it's going to help you along, and I'm going to continue to create content that's going to be useful for you on your blogging journey. Okay, from 0 to 5 million views. I always want to make sure that I am telling the 100% truth to the best of my ability without selling any hyperbolic dreams. There are people who are telling you that you can be successful on Medium. I am one of these people who is telling you that you can be successful on Medium. I have a program, one that costs a pretty penny, that describes how to be successful on Medium. That being said, I never ever want to create this kind of inaccurate picture of what it takes to be successful. I don't want to promise you things that are unachievable in unachievable timeframes. I want to tell you the exact truth about what it took for me to get here, and how you can maybe not achieve the exact same goals as me, but get yourself to a point where you're making a decent living writing, get yourself to a point where you have a real audience, you have a real voice, and you have a real writing habit, right? So the number one thing I mention in pretty much every article that I write about my success on Medium is that I started writing on Medium in November of 2015. So I think that, I don't know if I'm that great at math, but I think this is going to be, this November is going to be my 5-year anniversary of writing on the website. And I pretty much wrote and published something on an almost daily basis. So that is really, if you're looking at what it takes to build this explosive amount of views, it takes a lot of practice. And I will say this, I was somebody who had the benefit of being on Medium at the right time. Make no mistake about it. It was much easier to be successful on Medium if you had adopted early like I did. But even with my early adoption, I still had to put in the work. And so in your case, you're probably going to have to put in more work than I did to reach similar goals. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to wait 10 years before you're successful, but this does mean that as a new Medium writer, you are going to face an uphill battle when it comes to getting your views. There are just more writers on Medium. There is the attention is spread more thin, so you are going to have to do volume. And this is another thing that I openly mention about Medium. If you're the type of writer who you really like to sit back, you like to stew, you like to think deeply, you like to spend a really, really long time on your pieces, that is perfectly well and viable. That's actually a strategy that I have seen work for people. Just know that the incentive structures of Medium aren't necessarily conducive to that, and that's something that you have to be upfront with yourself about. So there's a writer named Zach Rana, and he actually talked about why he decided to leave Medium, and one of the reasons was because he felt like the financial incentive was making him write too quickly. It was making him produce too much content. So if you want to be successful on Medium, you are going to have to be a volume person. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to put out low quality work. That doesn't mean that there's a perfect correlation between time spent and quality. It just means that if you're going to be successful on Medium, you're going to be putting out 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 articles a week for years at a time in order to reach like a really high level like myself. But even if you're trying to get to some of those lower tier levels where you're making $1,000 a month, you're getting into the 4 figures, it's a real viable side project. I always tell people it's going to take at least a year. I'd say 12 to 18 months to get to that point, but you can start to see wins early on if you do some of the things that I tell you to do. If you put your work in publications, if you use some of the in-depth strategies that you can use to make your articles more persuasive. I'll make sure to link to some videos and articles where I talk about those. And the number one thing is to be persistent and get to a level of effort really above and beyond what I see for most writers who they don't spend nearly any time working on their Medium profile. I look at people who, complain about their lack of success on Medium, and I'll go to their profile, and 10 times out of 10, they will have less than a handful of articles, less than a few dozen articles, and they're complaining about Medium success. Or they'll have a bunch of articles, but they'll make that major mistake that I always talk about, which this will bridge into my next point. If you want to be someone who reaches a super high level on Medium, who has a lot of views and audience, understand that there's one thing that you're going to have to do with your content. And this is a particular preference of mine. It's the way that I learned how to write. It's the way that I teach others how to write. It's the way that I've seen be successful, especially on places like Medium. Audience-oriented content is going to win. Audience-oriented content is going to 9 times out of 10 do better than kind of your personal essay content. Now, I have seen a couple of writers who are very, very good at personal essays, and they do thrive in the platform. Like my friend Shannon Ashley, my buddy John Gorman. I've seen a couple other people out there who write personal narratives, but even those people, they write it in a way that it's appealing and giving a window into their lives, kind of reflects and almost acts like a mirror back into your life. But usually, the people who I see are most successful are the ones who create audience-oriented content. So what is that kind of content? That is content that is going to help people solve their problems. That is content that is going to lead to their aspirations and hopes in the future. This is content that is going to be geared towards information that's either entertaining, educational, or inspiring. I always talk about that trifecta of traits: entertainment, education, and inspiration. Those are the ones that do above and beyond on Medium. Don't get me wrong. You don't have to be a self-help writer like me to be successful on Medium. I've seen people do well in topics like love and relationships. I've seen people do well in topics like politics and culture. I've seen people do well with fitness and health. I've seen people do well with articles about science. I've seen people do well with articles about personal finance. I've seen people do well with articles about mental health and self-care and taking care of yourself. I've seen people write about equality or race, LGBTQ issues. I've seen people be successful doing marketing stuff, social media marketing content. So there's a lot of different kind of niches that you can be a part of. You don't have to just be like, here are your 10 steps for success to be successful on Medium. So don't try to become a self-improvement blogger if that's not something you're into. I just happen to be someone who really was into that kind of content, so I wrote that. You have to find the happy medium between what you're interested in and what the audience wants to read. So if you actually go in the description below, I have a link to a free email course that actually walks you through techniques to figure out that intersection between what you want to write and what people want to read. But without meeting that intersection, you're not going to be successful. And I notice people, they either do too much of one or the other. So most aspiring writers, they write almost solely about only the things that they care about, and they almost have like no empathy or sympathy towards the readers. And then there's some people who are like way too in your face, and they're pandering, and it's very obvious that they're just writing stuff to meet the audience needs. So you have to find a balance of doing both, and the only way you're going to do that is by writing more often. I know you hate to hear that trite piece of advice that you need to write more often to be successful, but it's true. So if you want to be successful on Medium, doing volume is going to be key. Doing audience-generated content is going to be key. And that also means putting in elements that are appealing to readers, from your headlines to the way that you phrase your content, to the way that you open your content, to the way that you close it, for the way that you structure your points, to the way you style your posts, and everything in between. So those 2 points are critical to success, and those are some of the things that help me reach 5 million views. And that's going to lead me to maybe the final point that I'll add. Never, ever, 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 ever take sustained breaks for long periods of time, or you will fall off the radar on Medium. No, I've said this in many other videos. I mean, basically all my videos where I talk about Medium are the same kind of key principles. It's like I'm saying the same video in slightly different ways till it sinks into your head, so you start writing. But I've had friends come to me and they're like, IL, why did I do this? And a lot of my writer friends, they kind of fell off and quit writing on Medium just as Medium was really picking up traction on the platform. So they'd have like 10,000 followers, but then they stopped writing, so their brand recognition went down. People didn't know who they were anymore. The curators didn't really know who they were anymore. So then they tried to revamp, and since they didn't have that continuous momentum, all of that success that they had built up earlier didn't carry over. And like I said, I've looked at it. I can count on my hands. I can count on one hand the prominent writers that are still on Medium that were there when I started. People like Darius Faru, who has like a bajillion followers. He has like 170,000 followers. Benjamin Hardy, who used Medium to build a 7-figure business. Thomas Apong, who also has crazy amounts of followers. All of these people, basically everyone who stayed on Medium the whole course over this past 5 years, are getting millions of views a year. All of them. But when I say all of them, I mean the 2 or 3 other people I just mentioned, right? Because that's the way that life works. When you weed everything down, there's always, in any endeavor, not just Medium, there's always a massive pool of people who start. And then 6 weeks in, the pool gets smaller. 6 months in, it shrinks. A year in, it's really getting small. 2 years in, it's really, really tiny. 3+ years, it's tiny, tiny, tiny. And then by year 5, there's like a grain of sand of people left. And there's a sea of other writers. So all my favorite writers that I looked up to, all my favorite bloggers, I always look back in their archives. And it's 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. I was just reading a book from my favorite writer, Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite writers. I went and checked his blog just for S words and giggles, and his first blog was in 2006. It's like 14 years ago. And he's still doing the work, still putting out books, still blogging. So I don't want to hear about your excuses for why you didn't become successful on Medium in 6 months. I know that you're not going to be able to see the entire map before you get started. I know making a commitment to years of writing in advance is not something that you're capable of doing right now. But focus on getting that initial traction. 90 days, 6 months, a year, see what happens. And I promise you'll be on your way to having a successful Medium profile and writing career in general. Okay, what I want you to do now is check out these amazing links in the description. You're going to see a link for a free 5-day email course that will walk you through the ins and outs of being successful on the platform. So go ahead, click that link, put your email in there, and you'll get access to that content right away. For those of you who are just like, you know what, I am ready to go. I am ready to take my Medium success to the next level. Go down to the description, and you will see a link to my Flagship premium online course, paid program that goes into as much depth as I possibly can as to how to succeed on the platform. Lastly, make sure to like the video, hit that like button, smash that like button to let the algorithm know that this video was of value so it'll share it to other people who are also interested in becoming successful writers. Leave a comment, let me know what other video ideas you want me to talk about in the future. There should be some videos popping up in front of your face right now. Make sure to check those out, and I will see you on the next video.